MMA Boxing Talk here. This is a preview video for UFC 223. It's coming up a little less than 3 weeks away. Cannot wait for this event. By far the biggest event of 2018 thus far. I can't wait. I'm going to put out a bunch of prediction videos for this card. I'm really excited for this one. Haven't been putting out much content lately, but this card gets me excited, and a lot of boxing as well on the horizon. Some really big fights coming up, especially Anthony Joshua next weekend, fighting an undefeated fighter in Joseph Parker, who also is a title holder, I should say. Just one step closer to undisputed. But regardless, I want to get in, before I get into UFC 223, I want to quickly talk about a rumor: Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson rematch, April 21st, Atlantic City. Apparently, the rumor is this fight is in the works, which is surprising in a way, and also not surprising. But surprising because Frankie Edgar just got stopped for the first time in his career earlier this month. It was March 3rd, and he's scheduled to fight a dangerous guy like Cub Swanson April 21st. That's less than 2 months in between getting knocked out. Frankie Edgar living up to the legend of Frankie Edgar. Like, it's mind blowing. So many people, like, let's just look at the fight he took with Brian Ortega. He didn't need to take that fight. That was a very risky fight for Frankie Edgar. He could have easily waited for Max Holloway. Easily. Max Holloway's talking about fighting in the summer, and I know Frankie hadn't fought since May of 2017, and he wanted to stay active, and I respect him for that. The whole MMA community does. But that's a risky fight, and, he lost. He got knocked out. First time ever getting stopped, submission or TKO. First time ever. And, I mean, hats off to Brian Ortega. But now Frankie's turning around. Such a quick turnaround to fight a dangerous guy like Cub Swanson. He's beat Cub before, but still very interesting. That card is quickly turning into something really impressive. But let's get right into 223. Amazing card. I mean, what more can you say about this card? I've been looking forward to the main event for years now. Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov. This is the fourth time this fight has been scheduled. The first time I believe Khabib had an injury. The second time Tony had fluid in his lungs. The third time was March of 2017. And Khabib was having a hard time with the weight cut and went to the doctors, and he withdrew from the bout. And so this is the fourth time this fight is happening. Someone said it best. I can't remember who it was, but this fight right here is MMA at its best. Tony versus Khabib. This is a fight that it doesn't need trash talk. If you're a real hardcore MMA fan, you don't need anything. You just need to sit down and watch this fight. And it hasn't happened yet. Knock on wood. It's going to happen April 7th. But this is a huge fight. Not only is it the best division in the UFC, the Shark Tank division, 155-pound division, it's the two best fighters in that best division in the UFC, who are both on these crazy, ridiculous win streaks. Tony Ferguson has won 10 fights in a row in the Shark Tank. Khabib Nurmagomedov is undefeated. Tony holds the interim title. The winner basically gets Conor McGregor. This is for the legitimate title. Dana White says they will be fighting for the undisputed lightweight title, so Conor will be stripped. Technically, I don't think he's been stripped yet, but he will be. This fight will be for the actual title. Since day one, I've had Tony Ferguson winning this fight. I gotta stick with my gut. I'm definitely leaning towards Tony Ferguson, as much as it's crazy to think Khabib is undefeated. He's beat so many good fighters. There's been basically, he hasn't really had much. Khabib in the UFC really hasn't had much adversity he's faced at all. He's pretty well walked through all of his opponents for the most part, and especially of late. He finally has a nutritionist. Hats off to Khabib, making weight, no problem in his last fight. Training smarter, it seems. But Tony Ferguson is a fighter that you cannot prepare for. And same goes with Khabib. You can't prepare for Khabib. You can't get a training partner in there that's going to be able to do what Khabib does. Obviously, you can get great wrestlers, but in an MMA fight, when you're in there, it's a whole lot to deal with. Let's be honest here. Look, Edson Barboza is a tough dude. Guys like Frankie Edgar and Eddie Alvarez were shocked, were mind blown to see Barboza get taken down so easily. They say he's impossible to take down in training. But this is Khabib. He wrestles bears. He trains with Luke Rockhold and Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier. This guy, pound for pound, is unstoppable in the wrestling department. But Tony Ferguson is something special. Tony Ferguson is different. Khabib has not faced a Tony Ferguson, someone with sharp elbows, someone who has better cardio than Khabib, someone who is arguably tougher than Khabib when you're talking about pain tolerance. This is a guy that can he can be so close to being finished, and his recovery skills are ridiculous. His mental toughness is ridiculous. There's nothing that Khabib is going to be able to do to stifle Ferguson. I mean, Ferguson is an animal. He could be on his back getting ground and pounded to pieces, and he's still going to get up at the end of that round and with a smile on his face. He's going to come back at the beginning of the next round going after Khabib. And every round starts on the feet, and Tony is much superior on the feet. I think his scrambles are going to give Khabib some problems. Khabib isn't necessarily the best at takedowns when off his first shoot. The first time Khabib shoots, he doesn't necessarily get the guy down. It's his second and third attempt where he gets him down. But Tony Ferguson is going to be out of there. He'll be squirming and scrambling and somersaulting out of these the original, the first takedown attempt. And if he is on his back or it is on the ground, Tony constantly is going to be throwing up submissions, making Khabib work, something that none of his opponents have ever done with Khabib. And this is a 5-round fight. Khabib's never gone 5 rounds. So it's very, very interesting. And I know Khabib's the favorite. And if I had to bet my house on it, I would bet Khabib to win this fight, of course. But I'm not betting my house on this. And I do think in my gut that Tony Ferguson is going to pull this off. Some way, somehow, he's going to pull this off. And let's not forget, Khabib, as dominant as he is, there's a lot of moments during his fights where he'll take time, he'll take breaks during rounds and, just lean on his opponent with his, that's not going to work against Tony Ferguson. That's not going to work against Tony Ferguson. Like I said, these submissions are going to be thrown at him constantly, making Khabib think about things, worry about things. And as this goes on, it's going to be mentally tiring for Khabib. It could wear him out, wear his gas tank out as well. The beginning of the 4th or 5th round, Tony Ferguson starts on his feet, and if Khabib doesn't have the juice to take him down, he's going to get lit up. And he better hope that he had banked a lot of rounds early on. And Tony's a finisher. And yes, Khabib has never been beat. He's never been finished. But don't think it's impossible for Tony Ferguson to finish Khabib. Don't think that's impossible. A lot of people thought it would be impossible for someone to stop Frankie Edgar. Even though I'm not comparing Frankie to Khabib, don't worry. But this fight is not a foregone conclusion, and a lot of fans believe it's a foregone conclusion that Khabib is going to maul Tony, and I just don't see it that way. I see Tony winning. I'm not sure. I hope that he could win a decision. Khabib is obviously has a much bigger following. The fight with Conor Khabib is way bigger than Tony Conor, or Conor Tony, whatever. So the UFC, if it goes to the cards, they're going to want Khabib to win. But MMA judges, they're much more unbiased, uncorrupted compared to boxing judges. So I'm gonna go Tony. This is my official prediction, but it's kind of turning out to be Tony Ferguson by decision, 5-round unanimous decision, maybe split, but I think he can pull off a decision. I think he could definitely get a late stoppage over Khabib, because I see Khabib maybe tiring in the later rounds, depending on how the fight goes. Obviously, I respect Khabib tremendously. I admitted right from the get-go he's the clear-cut favorite in this fight, and if I had to bet my house, I'd bet it on Khabib, but I don't have to bet my house on it. And my gut is telling me Tony Ferguson. It always has, it always will. So that's who I'm going with. And obviously, this isn't a UFC 223 preview video, because I only talked about the main event. But I got carried away. It is what it is. I will put out a 223 preview video along with predictions coming up soon. That's it for this one. If you liked the video, subscribe. Check me out on Twitter at MMABoxingTalk1. Peace.